morning, Coffee Chat friend. Another little talking head video here with, once again, more questions than answers. The topic this morning is represent versus present. You might be going, Well, I kind of was too at first. Let's square this up a little bit. It's better. Represent versus present. So when we think about the word represent, it's in its basic everyday meaning. I look at the first one. It says to be entitled or appointed to act or speak for someone, especially officially, in an official capacity typically. Now, from a meaning like that, if we're going to use that meaning, we could say, well, who are we representing? It's a good question. Are we representing something real or something we've been conditioned into? This comes back once again to knowing ourselves, isn't it? Do we represent ourselves? Can we represent ourselves? There's an old saying in law that something along the lines of only a fool represents himself. Why is that said? Well, let's look at some more of the meanings here. The second meaning was a constituent amount. So that's an interesting word, constituent, isn't it? Because if you look at things like constitution is the embodiment, if you will, of something. Constitution. So therefore, a constitution has many constituents. You could say that a loaf of bread is in itself, it's a constitution of a loaf of bread, but it has what constitutes that. You could go through the whole procedure of describing how you put this amount, this amount, this amount, and this amount. Well, then that makes the bread. It's what it is. The constitution of the universe, from what we study, is all these, we could say, is all these elements and what have you. Put all of them together makes up what makes up, right? So if we are a representative, if we represent a constitution, then we're saying that we are a constituent part of that constitution. So, and then in its origin, breaking it down, it means to and then to present. And then the etymology of the word present is to basically place before. So if we're going to represent, that means we already exist in the present, and we're presenting it again. So something exists and we're showing up to present it. I like also the RAP dictionary, rapdict.org. I like this one because it has something that I really relate to. It says represent, to stand for something you are convinced of or feel related to, and to express that feeling. For example, your family, your neighborhood, your upbringing, your values, which goes along well with principles, doesn't it? Etc. An example, throw your hood up if you representin'. So, if you're going to represent something, then represent it. But I think that line, throw your hood up if you representin'. So represent has to do with something, the base of it, that's not really us individually. If we have to throw our hoods up, we have to do something to ourselves, we have to get dressed up in a certain way to represent something very often. We want to represent, let's say, I want to represent my family, but then I have to present myself in such a way that now I'm no longer I'm not presenting myself, I'm representing the family. So if we think about it in terms of the verses, I would say, the represent versus the present, and why a fool would only represent himself is because we cannot represent ourselves, because we're already presented. So we present ourselves. We have to represent something which we feel is either not us or that we are a part of, if that makes any sense. So this, I think it does, right? I mean, we are present. Why do we have to represent ourselves? We have to show ourselves as something that we're not. And so often, this is what we've been led to believe. We're all these different titles that we have created, and they're less than us. We are citizens, and we are Catholics, and belonging to certain groups, and engineers. So we have to represent ourselves as that, because those are the things that we as human beings have created. So we have to jump down into that office. Remember the first meaning was to be entitled to or appointed to act, especially in an official capacity. So if we've created offices and job descriptions and so on, then through our documents and what have you, we represent that. Because we, the ones who are moving down to work in those offices or under those titles, we don't have to represent ourselves. We can just present ourselves as we are. But when we move down here, that's not what we are, so we have to represent. Now, where is legitimate, I feel? And this goes back to, once again, how does this improve the quality of our life experience? Well, I think by asking ourselves these questions, if it helps us to learn a little bit about ourselves and learn about, or get another perspective which makes more sense for ourselves, and we can remove the veil of fog and unclarity in our lives, then to me it just adds to the comfort, if you will, of discovery of what's going on and where am I in the place of this grand scheme of things. Even though it never completely answers it, it just goes, there's something about an aha moment that speaks quality to me that almost very few other things do. And being able to say, that makes sense now. And in terms of represent, to represent is like presenting again, right? I've talked many times about this thing I call the order of creation. And I'll just go through it again. What I mean by that is there's us, right? Men and women in this world. And we are all, we could say, fundamentally, in reality, nobody can make any kind of a reason to claim that any of us is lesser or greater than the other. We all come in with a kind of a clean slate. We're all different. We all have our little idiosyncrasies, differences, but nobody is going to honestly, there's no rationale to say that one of us is greater than the other. We're all here. We're all created as human beings, right? And then we create all these sort of things. But first of all, above us, if you will, is what creates us. And I like to put a big question mark on that, because I don't know the whole story. And from a purely logical sense, what is created, us, can never really know, in all honesty, how we're created. I mean, it's mysterious. We don't even understand everything about ourselves. In fact, probably a very small portion of ourselves. So we cannot understand ourselves, but we try to. We can't know what creates us. But nevertheless, from a purely cause and effect observation of things, and realizing that there's cause and effect, we can observe many causes and many effects. If we are created, then there must be that which creates us. Right? So, and then we can observe that we create. And we have this within us, abilities to write letters and to, put thoughts and build birdhouses and cities and what have you, and we create all this stuff. So all this stuff, you take, for example, an artist, somebody who does art, okay? Here's one man or woman creating art. Below them is the art. It has to be below them in terms of hierarchy, if you will. And they are greater than what they created. But what they create represents them in a way. It says, when you know somebody's art and you look at it, you say, that's so-and-so. I can see the fate, I can see the skill or the ability or even the signature of so-and-so over there on that piece of art. So it's kind of like it's representing the one who created it. So what I would say is that if we represent anything, the only thing, or the only thing, concept, whatever it is, that we can possibly represent, because we can't represent ourselves in reality. And we can't represent what we create. It can only represent us. Right? What gets created can only represent what creates it. So we can only represent that which creates us. So the mystery of what creates us shows up in the face of us. So when we look in the mirror, when we look at others, when we look at the world, we look at nature, we're looking at a representation of what creates us somehow. So the rap saying, put your hood up if you represent. Well, the hood up is probably, what is that? Bring your neighborhood up, put your hood up, everybody has it. If you want to, if that's the look of what you represent, well, what's the look, or what is it that we get the sense of that we would like to represent if we realize that we are in fact, well, not necessarily in fact, but as a result of any sort of logical train of thought, deduction, if we realize that we are the face, the person, if you will, or the face of what it is that creates us, that's what we are, that's what we're representing, then I don't know about you, but if I'm a diplomat of what creates me, that's my presentation, my representation, what I'm representing, then wow, that puts a huge sense of value to me on what it is that I do, how it is that I talk, how it is that I behave. And when I behave off of that line, from an unprincipled stance, it's almost like a guidance system. This whole values, this whole perspective, this whole order of creation, and what we are representing. it helps, I find, for me, in terms of how does it improve the quality of life? Well, it helps as a guidance system to bring back the perspective of what I'm doing, when I'm talking, when I'm acting, when I'm behaving, all these sorts of things. It's like a little reminder twig, a little reminder. It's like a guidance system, like a rocket flying to the moon. It's most of the time off course, actually, but it has to have a continual correction. And that's what we need so often in life, is this correction, so that we're brought back on. And little reminders of what it is. I mean, not incompleteness, but what it is on a principle basis, or a value basis, or a fundamental basis, that we are, what it is that we are representing. And what we are representing, if we think about it, is something much grander than us individually. I mean, even in a very practical sense, there's something we've often heard before, stewardship, being a steward of nature, for example. And a lot of this is going on now. If nature is pristine and it's clean, the air is clean and all that, and we are a part of that, and we deliberately go and then start polluting it and making a mess, more so than we need to, as an example, then we are, maybe, but based on the constituency as it was, we are being a poor representative, because we're fouling up things, right? And we can feel that within us even. So there's a guidance system built within us often that we can sort of, it's like a conscience, and it's, I don't know if it's inherent, but maybe it's learned. But nevertheless, even if it's inherent or it's learned, we can also still revert to our reasoned approach to realizing that we're a constituent of this, we're part of the one, of that creative force. And therefore, when we speak, when we act, because we're given life by life, because our life started because of life, a natural reaction to another action in life. We are sustained. The elements that exist there, we use, we consume, or they go through us. We breathe, we eat, we drink water. And all of these things, as a result of all of that, we can see very clearly that we're part of that constitution, and therefore we represent that constitution. And the more we're aware of that, the more it helps, I feel, to keep us in line to a principle-based way of living, and the way we're more apt to use our faculties for the benefit and in alignment with that constitution. And therefore we are less likely to use in the wrong direction our immediate faculties, our bodies, our minds, our emotionalities and whatnot. And we're less likely to abuse those things that we see as the greater part of the constitution, even the immediate tangible things like our environment, other people, our relationships, and drugs and alcohol and all these sorts of things. Are we representing or are we presenting? I would say we're doing both. It just depends on what perspective we're coming from. If we're coming from ourselves individually, we are always presenting ourselves. And we are a fool if we think that we can represent ourselves, because we are present. We don't have to represent ourselves. That which we create represents us. When we make a signature, people say, yes, that's your signature, because it's representing you in a way. What creates us presents itself as nature, as far as we can see. Just like the signature that we create represents us. all of nature is the signature of what creates us. And therefore, all we can do, the only thing we can do in terms of representing, is to represent that which creates us. That is a larger task, isn't it? That's an interesting one. And there's something about it that it's got a quality involved to it. All the blessings, it seems, are bestowed on us when we work for something grander than ourselves, when we represent that which is grander than ourselves, the One. I know it's food for thought. I ran longer again. I always try to get these things in 5 or 10 minutes, and I see on the clock it's 20 minutes. But thorough enjoyment. It was great talking to you again. Representing versus presenting. We're doing both. I hope this was helpful. All the best for now. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.